McCready, and I think everybody knows her, and Sean. And Melinda's going to tell you all about the beginnings of Macedonia Implement and walk you through the history.
Yay! All right, Melinda, come on over. Talk into it as loud as you can.
Okay, I'm not the best speaker, but I do have some pretty good stories to share. Today we'll look back at the history of Macedonia Implement, mixed with a little bit of farm life that on the way it used to be. Hopefully you'll hear a few things that will bring back memories to you too. The story of Macedonia Implement begins with Sean's great-grandfather, Charlie McCready.
Charlie, yeah.
Charles was born in 1862 in Fort Madison, Iowa, the son of a farmer. His family lived less than a mile from the Dye family, and it was in this small community that Charles forged a lifelong friendship with Willoughby Dye. The two young men later moved to Macedonia with Willoughby, arriving around 1874, and Charles following in 1880. Even after relocating, they often traveled back to Fort Madison together, keeping their connections to home strong. So Sean and I visited the cemetery and a couple years ago, and we drove past and we couldn't find it. So I stopped at a farmer's house and I asked. He says, "Oh yeah, it's back in the back of my lot." And he said, "Who are you looking for?" I said, "McCready." He said, "Oh yeah, his tombstone's right in front." Well, there's only like 15 graves. And he takes care of the cemetery. And he said, "Well, there's this town back in southwest Iowa, make sure I'm right. And there's this family called Macedonia, and I don't know if you know the Dye family, but we're going, well, that's where we're from, Macedonia." And he said the Dye family came and moved their tombstones to the cemetery out here. And he said there was a cemetery every mile. And he's the one that told us that the Dye family lived right there by the McCreadys.
If I knew she was going to show this picture, I should have dressed up a little bit better.
we were motorcycling.
Yeah.
And if you've never visited Old Cemetery, it's fun. When Charles first arrived in Macedonia, he worked as a farmhand, saving until he could purchase land of his own. As a bachelor, he not only worked the fields, but also cooked for the hired hands. At the age of 31, Charles married Bianca Stemple, who was also born in Fort Madison in 1869. Her family moved briefly to Cedar Bluffs after her father, Dr. Guido Stemple, completed medical school. Eventually, the Stemple family moved to Macedonia. Dr. Stemple was not only a physician, but also a passionate taxidermist. His impressive collection of preserved birds is still on display at the Stemple Bird Museum.
Amazing.
They are. In 1892, Charles partnered with S.D. Lane to open Lane and McCready, a business specializing in both shelf and heavy hardware. Their shop stood right where the Macedonia City Hall is located today. It was kind of a store that served as the heartbeat of a farming town, supplying everything from pots and pans, stoves, furniture, and caskets.
Yes.
By the summer of 1899, the business ownership in town shifted hands. The partnership of Anderson and Lane dissolved when F.A. Lane sold his share to Arch Anderson, creating Anderson Brothers, a restaurant that changed hands the following year. At the same time, Mr. Lane bought Charles McCready's interest in the hardware business of Lane and McCready, renaming it Lane and Sons. Within a year and a half, that store sold again, becoming Lane and Kaiser. Charles now had a decision to make, and he made it boldly. He invested his capital in the Botany Valley Implement Company, and became its manager, shifting away from the general hardware trade to focus entirely on farm equipment, which was becoming increasingly vital to the farmers across southwest Iowa. This picture was drawn by Joni Scott. Before 1899, an implement store had stood west of what is now Tybalt's gas station, but it burned to the ground in 1899. About that time, Charles joined forces with 4 other businessmen, Willoughby Dye, Sylvester Dye, T.J. Young, and R.H. Woodmansee, to purchase the Botany Valley implement and expand its reach. Charles then bought land on the south side of Main Street from Benjamin Rainbow, right in the center of town, and began planning a fine new brick building worthy of the growing community. By October 1899, their vision became a reality. The storefront, along with a massive 44 by 90 foot warehouse, stood proudly in the heart of Macedonia. Just weeks later, on October 27th, the business was officially incorporated under a new name, Macedonia Implement Company. Charles continued to be the manager, secretary, and treasurer. The grand opening was more than a ribbon cutting. It was an event. That evening, the town gathered for an open house and a grand ball with music provided by the famous Oakland Orchestra. Picture the scene. Lamplight glowing from the windows, couples in their finest outfits stepping onto the dance floor.
What year
was that? 1899.
1899.
I'm sorry, I'm lost.
Yeah.
There you are.
Yep.
From the start, Macedonia carried everything a farmer could need. Walking and riding plows, harrows, cultivators, seed drills, hay rakes and corn planters, wagons, buggies, harnesses, manure spreaders, windmills, pitchforks, shovels, axes. In the summer of 1901, the company employed a harness maker named William Horton. Charles, always willing to help someone in need, allowed Horton to sleep in the office. That kindness soon turned sour. When no one was watching, Horton secretly made a key that could open the company's safe.
No.
Since the outer office door was never locked, he had an easy opportunity. On the night of September 6th, Horton quietly let himself in, unlocked the safe, and took $110 in cash. A sum worth several months' wages at the time. From there, Horton walked to Carson, hired a livery team, and rode to Council Bluffs. Charles immediately posted a reward for his capture, determined to see justice served. 2 weeks later, Horton was found working in Essex. The Macedonia constable brought him back, and before long he was sentenced to 2 years of hard labor in the state penitentiary at Fort Madison.
Wow.
Early in the spring of 1902, Charles sold his house in South Macedonia. See the first house? I think down there where Keith's live, somewhere down there. And purchased the lot next to the hotel directly across from the Methodist Church. By December, the McCready family moved into their new home. Charles and Bianca had 2 children, Eda V, born in 1893, and Ralph, better known as Cubby, born in 1895. So Sean and I lived in that house for a little while
Really?
before we tore it down.
Huh.
It was cold.
I'm sure the last haunted house, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
let me
right
talk
across
about
the
Eda.
church.
Eda devoted much of her life to entertaining. She worked for years as a hotel activity director, contributed articles to the local newspaper, hosted her own radio program, and performed with her puppets. The Gristmill Arts Council is named in her honor. Ralph began working as a mechanic right out of high school. In 1917, he enlisted in the Army during World War I and was discharged 2 years later. When he was in training camp, he developed emphysema, which led to
The flu. Influenza.
Ralph spent many weeks in hospitals throughout his life, consulting specialists in South Dakota, Omaha, Lincoln, Chicago, and he underwent numerous surgeries. As the business grew, Ralph became a major force in the operation. Eventually, he bought out the other stockholders, solidifying Macedonia Implement as a true family business owned and guided by one family's vision and commitment to serve local farmers. No one could have guessed that in the spring of 1909, all of it would be threatened in a matter of minutes. It was a little after 7 a.m. Smoke was seen rising from the basement of the Macedonia Implement Company. Inside were the company's entire stock, farm implements, wagons, buggies, harnesses, everything Charles and his partners had worked to build. The alarm ran out, and soon the hose cart and portable pump were at work, shooting a stream of water onto the burning building. Thick, choking smoke filled the building so quickly that saving the goods was nearly impossible. Only a couple of plows and one buggy were pulled out before the building filled with smoke. Charles managed to rescue the company books, but everything else was trapped inside. We have the books. The danger wasn't just to his store. Right next door to the east stood Miller and Company, then the post office, the Bottom Valley newspaper office, and the Mickey blacksmith shop, and next on the corner was a livery barn. All of them could be lost if the flames spread or if the east wall should fall in. Town people rushed to carry goods from the nearby buildings to safety. Men battled the blaze with streams of water while the women of the town pitched in tirelessly, hauling goods, bringing water, and keeping the pumps going. Citizens from Carson and Henderson joined the effort. At various times it looked like the building could be saved, as only occasionally a blaze could be seen through the window. Then a stream of water would be thrown on it. But on account of the smoke, it was impossible for anyone to enter the building and locate the exact location of the fire. It was not until 11 a.m. that the flames burst through the front of the building and all hope was lost. Minutes later, the west wall gave way in a deafening crash, and the structure was reduced to smoldering ruins. The drugstore next door suffered only minor damage, a portion of the glass front being broken out by the heat and scorched walls. The cause was never certain, though it likely began near oil barrels in the basement. The loss was staggering, about $20,000 in building and stock, plus weeks of lost business. The brick building, erected in 1899 at a cost of $5,000, was gone in just a few hours. But Charles and his fellow stockholders didn't hesitate. That very evening they met and voted to rebuild immediately. In the meantime, the company operated out of the town's opera house, and by October, a brand new building was ready. The new structure had a harness shop in the back where harnesses were made to the farmer's order. Each set was made different and fancier than the last. Buggies and implements were displayed on the main floor, while the basement served as a repair room and assembly for the new equipment. So, yeah, downstairs. By the early 1910s, Macedonia Implement had expanded beyond farm machinery. They were also selling automobiles and gasoline. An ad from 1910 shows they were carrying Overland autos, another showing Dodge automobiles, and a 1928 ad promotes Buicks. Charlie didn't keep many cars in stock. More often than not, when one sold, he and Ralph would make the trip to Council Bluffs to bring it back. During those Dodge years, Ralph set out one day to demonstrate a new model. He called on 11 potential customers, but still new to the art of closing a sale, didn't sell a single car. The very next day, Charlie and the Dodge sales rep from Omaha retraced Ralph's route and sold 10 cars. But when they stopped at Mimi Woodmansey, they hit a snag. Mimi had taken her test drive with Ralph and insisted she would only buy from him. April 23rd, 1911, that began as a pleasant motoring excursion, nearly ended in tragedy. Val Plum and A. Braden had each purchased new automobiles, and Charlie accompanied them to Council Bluffs to bring the vehicles home. On the return, Charlie rode with Mr. Plum, and within a mile from Macedonia, the car swerved and overturned into the ditch. All three men jumped free and landed safely. But in a cruel twist, the one-way car continued flipping and struck Charlie, pinning him to the ground. He was severely injured, suffering internal injuries and vomiting blood. In 1911, such symptoms were often considered fatal, as internal injuries were difficult to diagnose or treat without modern medical imaging or surgery. Dr. Prince, who had been in the car, likely feared the worst, and word quickly spread throughout town that Charlie might not survive the night. Yet just a few days later, to everyone's relief, Charles was on his feet, well, on crutches. Along with selling automobiles, Macedonia Implement also sold gasoline. And I don't know if you can see the gas pump right there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who these two girls are. I think they're Knowles, but I'm not sure. Does anybody remember the gas pump?
No.
Yeah.
Would the gas tank have been underneath the ground?
I think it was.
I don't. And they might have just used it for their own cars and tractors. I'm not sure. From 1999 to 1910, the farm was powered almost entirely by muscle, both human and animal. Horses were the backbone of every operation, and a good team of draft horses was a farmer's greatest asset. Mules were also used, especially for pulling heavy plows through the rich Iowa soil. Livestock played a big role too. Hogs were especially profitable, while nearly every farm had dairy, cows, chickens, and a large garden to feed the family. Dairy life on the farm was demanding. Fields were worked from sunup to sundown, and most chores, feeding livestock, milking cows, hauling water, splitting firewood, was still done by hand. Roads were rough, often little more than dirt paths, so hauling grain to the market meant a slow trip by wagon to the rail depot. The first tractor to ever carry the John Deere name was the Dane, all-wheel drive, a machine far ahead of its time. Deere had been selling other brands of tractors, but in 1914 they hired engineer Joseph Dane Jr. to design a tractor worthy of the John Deere reputation. The Dane featured all-wheel steering and a unique three-wheel design, 2 wheels in front and 1 in the rear, driven by a heavy-duty chain system. Even more remarkable, it had a gear-shifting transmission, a rarity in tractors of that era. features well ahead of its competition. But there was one problem: cost. The Dane was well built, reliable, and powerful, but also too expensive for most farmers. Only about 100 of those tractors were ever produced, making them one of the rarest machines Deere ever built. I bet the Indian Creek would take it if you guys find one.
Yeah.
Recognizing the need for something more affordable, John Deere purchased the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company in 1918, gaining the popular Waterloo Boy tractor. It was rugged, simple, and most importantly, within the reach of the average farmer. The Waterloo Boy quickly became Deere's primary tractor. Then came the Model D in 1923, the first tractor fully designed and manufactured by John Deere. It was built to last, with a 2-cylinder engine that earned the nickname Johnny Popper for its distinguished sound. In 1927 came the Model GP, general purpose, Deere's first row crop tractor. Then in 1934, the legendary Model A rolled out, affordable, versatile, and became one of Deere's all-time favorites. When these new tractors began showing up in the Macedonia area, farmers were curious but cautious. Horses had been the backbone of farming for generations, and many neighbors doubted whether these gasoline contraptions could really replace a good team of horses. But little by little, the tractors proved themselves. They could plow longer hours without tiring, pull heavier loads, and cover more acres in a day than a horse team ever could. By the late 1920s and early 30s, more and more Macedonian farmers were trading in their teams for Waterloo Boys, Model Ds, and Model As. It marked a turning point in local agriculture as fields once worked behind horses now echoed with the sound of Johnny Poppers. At Macedonia Implement, the transaction was just as important. In the early years, the dealership carried several brands of farm implements: McCormick, Deering, International Harvester, and John Deere, so farmers had options. But in 1916, the decision was made that would define the company's future. The McCready family chose to align exclusively with John Deere. From that point forward, the family stood proudly with a long green line. And as Charlie and Cubby liked to say, they would trade for anything, horses, cows, or whatever a farmer had, in order to help him drive home new equipment. On October 1916, one of the stock owners, T.J. Young, passed away from cardiac failure at the age of 61. Young was a pillar of the community. Back in 1882, he and Mr. Evans built Macedonia's first grain elevator. After Evans sold his share, the elevator became Meckenwaldt and Young. Beyond managing the grain company, he was vice president of the Macedonia State Bank and a stockholder of the Opera House and the Macedonia Telephone Company, and owned nearly 2,000 acres of land around Doni, along with several town properties. He was also a member of the school board for 27 years. November 1917, mischief followed Halloween night. Someone painted the front of the store bright yellow. Charles offered a $100 reward for information leading to whoever was responsible. I don't know if they found him. Might have been one of you guys' ancestors.
Could have been.
Around 1918, Mike Herbert joined the staff of Macedonia Implement, specializing in pumps and windmills. Mike was a father of Agnes Nyquist, and young Agnes often went along on service calls. When a windmill needed fixing, Mike climbed to the very top, dropped a line down, and Agnes would tie on the tools and parts he called for. Mike drove a Model T Ford Roadster, modified with the rumble seat removed and a custom-built trunk in its place, perfect for hauling the wrenches, gears, and fittings needed for his trade. The harness shop in the back of the store was a busy place. In the summer, fly nets to protect the horses were strung beside the wood pillars, and the buggy whips hung for display. In the fall and winter, sets of harness were stacked on the floor, waiting to be repaired or oiled. A huge tank of harness oil sat in the northwest corner of the shop. Each set of harness was lowered in, soaked, and then hauled up above the tank to drip. This part of the store was the domain of Dick Shuck, a skilled harness maker and repairman that started in 1918. Bill not only built and mended harnesses, but also took in shoe repair work. He worked for Macedonia Implement until 1957. Bill was the father of Glenn Carley's first wife, Mildred. Anna Ruby Ellerman was born in 1896 and earned her teacher's certificate in 1915 from the Kansas State Agriculture College, which is now the Kansas State University. She began her career teaching in Kansas before applying for a position in Macedonia. In the fall of 1922, Ruby was hired to teach in Macedonia. That year, she taught home ec, an advanced class since there was only one girl in the freshman class. She also taught history and civics. At that time, the school had no hot lunch program. To provide meals in the winter, students brought vegetables from home in the fall, and the class canned them for later use. Ruby's salary was $160 per month for a 9-month term. Ralph and Ruby were married in February of 1925. Just months later, on June 3rd, the Macedonia School Board voted not to hire married women as teachers.
Oh, God.
There was 10 teachers on staff that year. 3 married after school was out, and 2, including Ruby, had married during the school year. Ralph and Ruby raised 2 children, Tom and Wilma, better known as Joanne. Like her mother, Joanne became a home ec teacher, first in Carson and several other towns before settling in Missouri Valley for many years. Ralph was deeply involved in education as well, serving on the school board for many years, including time as president. In a proud family moment, Ralph handed both Tom and Joanne their high school diplomas. When the United States entered the war, World War I, in 1917, farming in southwest Iowa changed almost overnight. Farmers were told that they were on the second front, and the slogan, "Food will win the war," was everywhere. With Europe's farmland destroyed by years of fighting, America was expected to feed not only its own people, the Allied armies and starving citizens overseas. To encourage production, the government guaranteed high prices. Wheat at $2.20 a bushel, nearly double pre-war levels, with corn and hog prices also soaring. Farmers across the region plowed up pastures, planted more corn, and raised more hogs and cattle to meet the demand. Horses and mules still powered most farms, but tractors and motorized equipment were beginning to appear in the countryside. Dealers saw demand rise for plows and cultivators, and companies like John Deere expanded aggressively into rural Iowa, laying the groundwork for the tractor boom of the 1920s. Labor shortage were another challenge. With so many young men leaving for the Army, families relied heavily on women, children, and older men to keep farms running. High prices and strong demand meant good incomes, and land values skyrocketed. But this prosperity didn't last long. When the war ended in 1918 and Europe began producing its own food, prices collapsed almost overnight. Farmers who borrowed heavily to buy more land or machinery suddenly found themselves drowning in debt. The burden would linger throughout the 20s and set the stage for even deeper troubles in the 1930s depression. The drought years in the Great Depression of the 30s brought some of the hardest times Macedonia and the surrounding farm country had ever faced. Summers were cruel. By July, the corn in the fields were as dry and brown as it would have been in October. Stalks rattled in the hot wind. The Nishnamotna River shrunk to a sand bed with a narrow trickle winding down the middle. The Dust Bowl made its presence felt, even in Iowa. Wind carried black dust of dirt hundreds of miles, leaving a layer of grit on kitchen tables and barns and machine sheds. Crops withered, livestock starved, and farmers watched their hard work literally blow away. Prices collapsed. A bushel of corn brought only a few cents. Hogs often sold for less than the feed it took to raise them. Many farmers couldn't pay their taxes or keep up with the banknotes, and foreclosures auctions became a grim reality across southwest Iowa. When farmers struggled, so did the businesses that served them. Few farmers could even think about buying new equipment when they could barely hold on to their farms. Ralph carried the weight of the business on his shoulders, calling on customers farm to farm, not to make sales, but to try to collect on long overdue accounts. If he came back with $5 or $10, it was enough to keep the doors open another day. Many payments weren't made in cash at all, but in chickens, eggs, or cream, whatever people had to offer. Ralph never turned anyone away. He knew that trust and loyalty mattered more than the balance sheet. The dealership survived by focusing on what farmers needed most, repairs. Older machines were patched and repatched. The long green line of the John Deere didn't march forward with shiny new tractors in those days. It endured because farm families and local businesses pulled together, scraping by until better days returned. Years ago, the McCready and Henry claimed victory by winning 3 out of 5 games and proudly stuck feathers in their hats. Diane Smith tried for years to take them, but just when a winning seemed certain, the rules changed or someone was called away. Through many swore Diane Smith had the upper hand. More than once, they never claimed the feathers. Their long running battle carried on in the clubroom above Dye's store, the implement building, or the back of the Stimple drugstore. Charlie is the one in the white, and you can see their feathers in their caps. In January 1930, Carl Stimple began working as a mechanic for Macedonia Implement. Just 3 years later, in 1933, he was sent to Oakland to manage the dealership's new branch location. The dealership occupied out of the building where the Baptist Church stands today. After 8 years of steady work, Carl purchased the Oakland business and renamed it Stimple Implement. Carl and Ralph were second cousins. In the early days of Macedonia, the southeast corner of Main Street, right down here, was home to a bustling livery stable, a 2-story frame building with a 1-story annex to the west. The horse barn stretched along the south edge with a ramp leading down to the lower level where teams of horses were stabled and cared for around the clock. Traveling salesmen arrived with trunks full of goods, hiring rigs or drivers to carry them to Henderson or Carson, wherever commerce called. Farmers coming to town to trade sheltered their horses and mules from the cold, paying a modest fee for feed and care. Buggies and carriers were stored safely in the annex, while attendants kept watch upstairs, sleeping in modest rooms above the stable, ready to serve at a moment's notice. A windmill on the corner spun lazily above a well, watering the steady stream of horses and mules that passed through. The livery was a hub of motion and necessity in the daily rhythm of Macedonia. Over the years, ownership changed hands. Grant Pilling once operated the livery, and he sold it in 1907. Sometime a brick building eventually replaced the old stable. To the exact date and the builder are uncertain. The building housed a variety of businesses over time, including auto repair shops, auto sales, and even included a post office in the west office for a year. The last garage on the property before Macedonia Implement purchased it on June 1951 was owned by Wayne Clark and operated as Clark's Garage. When the post office moved out around the 1950, the Clark family converted this section into an apartment where they lived until they sold the property to Macedonia Implement and relocated to California. As farm machinery grew, the dealership needed more space to service tractors and implements. And in June of 51, the building was purchased from Wayne to serve as a company's shop. The apartment continued to be used as a rental. World War II brought its own set of challenges for Macedonia Implement. Like every business, the dealership operated under strict rationing. New machinery was nearly impossible to get, with production shifted to support the war efforts. Farmers who needed equipment were put on waiting lists, and when a tractor or implement finally arrived, the person at the top of the list had the first chance to buy it. In the meantime, farmers had to make do. Old implements were repaired, and parts were salvaged from machines sitting behind barns. Nothing went to waste. The dealership's repair shop became more important than ever, keeping aging equipment running. When the war ended in 1945, farming in southwest Iowa ended a new era. Returning soldiers expanded farms, and the demand for modern machinery surged. Tractors were no longer a luxury, they were a necessity. Macedonia Implement became the place where farmers traded in horses or worn-out pre-Depression tractors for something new. The John Deere Model A and Model B were among the most popular choices. The A gave farmers dependable power for larger jobs, while the smaller and more affordable B was perfect for everyday chores. Those with heavier ground or more acres often stepped up to the Model G, while the faithful Model D, first produced in 1923, was still holding its own, but finally gave way to the newer technology. By the early 1950s, customers were excited to see Deere's new numbered series tractors, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which featured more horsepower, improved hydraulics, and even electric starting. For many farmers, these were the machines that carried them into the modern age of agriculture. The Lone Star School closed in 1946. The building, located 6.5 miles northwest of Macedonia, was put up for auction. The American Legion in Macedonia purchased it and moved it to town, placing it on a foundation behind the implement store, where it served as a Legion Hall. The building remained in use until the mid-60s, when Macedonia Implement purchased the 2-story structure. The upper floor was removed, a large garage door was installed on the south, and the structure was converted into a shop space for repairing combines, with room for 1 or 2 combines at a time. I don't know if you guys remember the Legion.
Yeah.
I know I went to Junior Legion with Merlene. The dungeon. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The slave days. Also back there, and I don't remember, was an old shed.
Hmm.
Sean remembers it, but they used it for storage.
I think it's all apart.
It was set back there about where the can corral is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, do you guys want to take a break? Do you want me to keep going?
We're good.
You're good.
Yeah.
By the 1950s, Macedonia Implement had grown into more than just a dealership. It was a gathering place. Farmers would stop in not only to talk machinery, but to swap stories, catch up on the weather, and often lingering long after closing times. Whenever the guys wanted to play poker after hours, they would use a code. They would call around and say there was going to be a meeting of the garden club. Of course, it wasn't about flowers or vegetables.
Garden club.
Oh, wait a minute. Fern Bisbee, correspondent for the Carson Critic in Oakland Acorn, tried more than once to get details about this so-called garden club for the newspaper. But no matter how many times she asked, she never could get a story. Just smiles and shrugs. Tom was born October 1930 and attended Simpson College before enlisting in the Navy in 1951. During the Korean War, his training began in San Diego, followed by Technical Air Base School in San Francisco, where he was stationed at Treasure Island. It was there that he met Suzanne O'Brien, born in 1934 in Albany, New York, who was also serving in the Navy. Sue worked in the office, where Tom reported each morning with updates on who was sick and who was available for duty. Tom was drawn to her voice and eventually asked her out. Their first date nearly ended in disaster. Tom arrived, unshaved and exhausted from a long day of work. Fortunately, Sue gave him another chance. Before long, they were married. After his service, Tom brought his new bride back to Macedonia, where he began at the implement business as a mechanic. He soon moved into sales, and after Ralph's passing, he became president of the company. Tom and Sue raised 3 sons, Sean, Kevin, and Brian. Like their father, all 3 started out as mechanics at Macedonia Implement. Kevin only worked a few years before pursuing other opportunities. Sean transitioned into sales, and Brian focused on parts. The family's legacy continues into the next generation when our son, Eric, joined the business. He too began as a mechanic, then moved into sales after college. Eric is the only family member still active in the business. Every few years, we'd load up a bus, take our customers on tours of the John Deere factory. They got to see tractors or combines being built right on the line, which was always a big hit. That's Ralph on the end in his bibs, ready for the trip.
Melinda, where is the factory, or where was the factory?
John?
Illinois.
Yeah. The factory, so the tractors was Waterloo.
Waterloo,
And the
Moline, East Moline has a plow planter, and combines.
And they're still there today.
Also, sometimes they went to the main headquarters. They're also in Moline. Been a few years since I've taken a few tours, but
Back in the 1950s, Cubby would put together a monthly newsletter for customers. One of the regular features was a column he called Just Plain Horse Sense. where he started advice and a little humor. The newsletter also included updates on what was new in equipment, specials we were running, and used equipment we had for sale. I bet Eda V helped him. Our parts department was the backbone of the business. No matter how tough times got, farmers could count on us to have whatever needed to keep going. And our service team was just as important, working long hours to keep tractors and equipment running when our customers needed them most. Since the very beginning, John Deere days were a big tradition. Every year we show a John Deere movie featuring the newest equipment and updates, and of course the meal was served. It started down in the basement of this basement, and back then every table had a pile of cigarettes on it. Later, when we moved to the service building on the corner, the floor always got a fresh coat of John Deere green paint and new linoleum on the shop floor where the tractors were worked on. As the 1970s drawn, farmers in southwest Iowa entered a period of dramatic change. In 1972, the United States struck a deal with the Soviet Union, selling massive amounts of wheat and corn overseas. Practically overnight, corn prices doubled and soybeans became a golden crop. And with money in their pockets, farmers were eager to modernize and expand. Macedonia Implement felt the surge firsthand. New machinery sales took off as farmers traded in their faithful two-cylinder tractors for powerful new models like the John Deere 4020, 4430, and eventually the popular 4440. Four-wheel drive tractors appeared in great numbers, while bigger planters, field cultivators, and heavy disc rippers rode out of the lot. Self-propelled combines began to replace the smaller prototype machines, reshaping the look of harvest across the countryside. Banks were willing partners in this boom. Credit was cheap, with low interest rates and easy loans. Farmers bought land, financed equipment, and built larger machinery sheds to house their growing fleets. The dealership stayed busy keeping up with the demand as more customers came through the doors than ever before. But the late 70s cracks began to show. Inflation climbed and the interest rate followed. Fertilizer, seed, and fuel costs rose sharply, eating away at the farm's profits. The weather added its own challenges, dry years, wet years, and everything in between. Even so, the mood remained largely optimistic, and prosperity of the decade carried on through it quietly set the stage for the storm that would arrive in the 80s. Here's Tom leading one of the many clinics we hosted over the years. We offered sessions on planning and harvester tips, helping farmers get most out of their equipment. I don't know who the guy is on the right. The 1970s was a whirlwind of activity at Macedonia Implement, especially in parts and service. For several months, the dealership was without a dedicated parts person. While John Deere had a parts warehouse in Omaha, it was easier to drive there for the parts they needed than to dig into the weekly deliveries stacked in pallets. In 1974, Cinda Frayne applied for a job at the dealership. Ralph, ever protective of traditional ways, told her it wasn't a place for a woman to work. That night, Tom visited Cinda at her home and personally offered her the job. They were desperate. Bright and early Monday morning, she arrived to find the employees having coffee. When she told them Tom had hired her, they laughed. After all, Tom did not usually get to work until 10 a.m. Cinda jumped right in. She spent weeks organizing the parts, putting everything away that was in pallets, and creating a complete inventory. Each item was recorded on a card system. The counter was taller than she was, so Tom built her a steady box to stand on, a platform she would use for the entire of her time at the dealership. When the dealership finally hired another partsman, Cinda requested Saturdays off, as had been promised when she was first hired. Ralph, with his characteristic good humor, told her she could have Saturdays off, and every day. She chose to continue working. Her role went far beyond parts. She ran errands, drove Ralph and Ruby to the doctors, and even went next door to Crowder's to pick up beer. For Ruby, Ralph insisted. I should ask if you guys got any stories before I go on.
Yeah. Oh,
Not very much. Business was booming in the 1970s, and Macedonia Implement had clearly outgrown its Main Street buildings. Working on dual tractors was a tight fit. Sometimes the duals had to be removed just to squeeze tractors into the shop. Combines were repaired in the man cave out back, and juggling operations across the 3 separate buildings made daily work inefficient. To solve the problem, land was purchased from Glenn Miller, and construction began in the fall of 1979. By spring, the new facility was ready, and Dale Hobson was hired to help with the move. Employees and countless volunteers pitched in, carefully boxing parts and transferring everything from the old buildings. Tom remarked that the shop didn't need to be quite that large, so he pared off 40 feet from the shop. But the extra space that remained was a huge improvement. Appreciated by everyone, Dale continued to work in parts until he retired. The new facility was celebrated with an open house in August of 1980, a major milestone in the company's growth. Guests enjoyed a barbecue dinner at 6:30, followed by a dance from 9 to midnight with music provided by the Joe Shoemate Band. On July 4th, 1980, Macedonia celebrated its centennial in grand style. Sean had a bold idea. Let's get the rumbles and hold the dance in our new shop. Terry McLean agreed, but voiced a concern. What if nobody comes? They were very expensive. That Saturday night, with no other dances scheduled for miles, the shop filled with excited town people. Sean had predicted they needed 23 kegs of beer for the weekend. Some of the committee members thought he was out of his mind, but he wasn't far off. The dance was a roaring success, alive with music, laughter, and a packed crowd. The summer heat blazed outside, but inside everyone was swept up in the celebration. By Sunday, they found only 1 keg that didn't get tapped. On Monday morning, the beer profits, still smelling of hops and foam, was taken to the bank. It was a weekend no one in Macedonia would soon forget.
That's wild.
You guys were
Great
all
time.
there?
Attaboy.
In October of 1980, Macedonia Implement had an unwelcome surprise. Thieves broke into the building and cleaned out nearly everything they could carry. 5 full toolboxes belonging to the mechanics were loaded into one of the shop pickups, along with several chainsaw, hand tools from the display floor, and even the television and VCR. For several days, the mechanics couldn't turn a wrench. Each mechanic supplied their own tools. It took time before they could replace what was lost and get customers' tractors rolling again. From that point forward, every mechanic was required to keep an inventory of their tools, just in case. The stolen shop pickup turned up a few days later in Omaha. abandoned and empty. The crooks were long gone.
Yep.
By the mid-1980s, the farm economy hit rock bottom. Crop prices fell so low that many farmers couldn't even cover their basic operating costs. For some, selling out became the only option. Farm auctions became a common sight, a heartbreaking sight across southwest Iowa. With so few farmers able to purchase machinery, equipment dealers struggled. Many closed their doors for good, and Macedonia Implement survival meant adopting quickly. Parts and service became our lifeline, keeping us afloat during one of the toughest years agriculture had seen since the Great Depression. In the summer of 1989, Macedonia Implement marked its 90th anniversary with a celebration that was truly special. To honor the milestone, the family had custom belt buckles made for their loyal customers. Ramona Samples, a long-time employee, worked closely with John Deere to perfect the design and get it approved. The celebration included a dinner prepared by Galen and Marge Batten, a dance with music from Brian, Rod, and Troy, and a display of antique machinery brought in by the local farmers. It was a festive evening that celebrated both the dealership's history and the community that has supported it for nearly a century. In the 1990s, we hosted a Farm Safety Days, including students from Riverside South from the Macedonia School. The kids rotated through different stations where they learned about farm safety and equipment. In 1999, Macedonia celebrated its 100th anniversary with a lively two-day event on June 25th and 26th. The festivities began on Friday with a 4-person best ball golf tournament. Nearly 40 antique tractors provided by the Two-Cylinder Club in Emerson. In the afternoon, children lined up for the kiddie tractor parole, followed by a barbecue dinner catered by Ross and Annette Frame that served more than 900 guests.
Wow.
One of the highlights was a raffle of a restored 1949 John Deere B, won by Kayla Bass, granddaughter of Bud Brown. Eric later bought the tractor. The tractor is there in the corner.
Ah.
This is the employees that worked there in 1999. In March of 2002, Macedonia Implement completed a major expansion that transformed the dealership. A new shop addition measuring 155 feet long by 80 feet wide greatly increased workspace. While the old shop had room for only 3 combines, the new space could accommodate up to 10, freeing the original shop for more tractor repairs and other projects. As part of the project, a brand new addition was built to house the stage sales offices, moving them off the show floor. The parts counter was also redesigned, improving workflow and making it easier for staff to serve customers. In 2006, Macedonia Implement teamed up with Athen Implement in Hamburg, Southwest Iowa Equipment in Malvern and Red Oak, forming A&M Green Power. This allowed the combined dealerships to better serve farmers across the region. Just a year later, McCready Equipment also joined the partnership. A few years later, we combined with other dealerships and changed our name to AgriVision Equipment. So that's a little piece of the history, but the best part of Macedonia Implement is the people who have been part of it over the years. Does anybody have a memory they would like to add? This,
Put us on the spot.
that's kind of blurry, but I have about 60 employees that I know work there. I am probably missing quite a few. I do know that when the county was off in the wintertime, sometimes the county workers would come and help in the wintertime, like Larry Hoos. That is all I have.
Tracy just knows that she's not on there.
Macy!
Was you hired as Macedonia Implement or A&M?
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that's wild.
It wasn't me.
A lot of history.
Lot of history.
Great.
I can turn this down. This is our 125th. If you guys want to watch it, and we had about 125. I'm hoping most of you was there.
Yeah, it's great.
It was quite the Donny Day.
Well, iron.
That was great.
That is going to just repeat. How do you turn that down, Marianne? So if you guys want to visit or tell stories.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Yeah. Good history. Right. Thanks, Melinda.
Yes, thank you
And
guys.
John. Oh, boy.
Questions for any of the McCreadys? I have a question. Melinda or Sean or anybody explain. So Macedonia Implement still exists.
We are still stockholders of AgriVision equipment.
But is the entity Macedonia Implement still
Yeah, we're a we have a C corporation today still.
okay? That's what I thought.
What year did this become the McCready theater?
What was that?
Well, you're gonna become the theater.
The theater? So we built the
70?
shop in '79, and I believe, Eileen, you're here, that they borrowed it, right, at first, and then they decided to purchase it?
We rented it for a number of years, and I don't remember the exact year we bought it, but Chris and Bill bought it.
And it pretty much looks the way it did back then. There was an elevator back here where they could bring up, what did you bring up on the elevator?
Tractors and,
Yeah, things for the showcase and,
Melinda, the wheel from the elevator is right back here. It's right here.
okay. Oh, so they had parts up there. I got a story about Rocky Pilling when he was probably 5. Said he used to stop on the way home from school and he'd go up there and get a tractor, charge it to Dad.
Where did the equipment go that used to be? There's a little bit of it left, but where did all of the implements go?
That we're hanging.
Were hanging. scare the audience.
Yeah.
Well, most of it's still there. Some of it's gone. Either somebody's come and got it, or most of the stuff is still there.
A lot of it was
Donated, we had.
donated to us and borrowed.
Yeah. Spinning wheel, I think it's
It was
I don't- just come
part of
down
it
to
had
you.
been donated to you, you're saying?
Well, kind of loaned to us to use, and then nobody ever came and got them back. I don't know. I really don't know.
Melinda, we were fortunate enough to start farming in 1980. Not the best year in the world.
No.
But I sat down at the desk with Tom and Sean. I bought used 4430, a 220 disc took full with it, a 4-row 7,000 pounder, and a 4-row cultivator. And I wrote him a check for $30,000.
Wow.
Luckily, we had just sold a house so we could do that. But you can't even buy that tractor for that today. And 1980 was not a good year to start.
It was not a good year to start.
But we didn't have any more debt either. And that was the problem with the 80s year, was the 70s debt.
Yeah, I think about all these century farms, how they survived some of those bad years. And I know Sean has tried to tell some of the new employees, you better be prepared because it's going to go down, it'll go back up, but it will go down.
Always had.
It always has.
So your little uniform, is that
Ralph's.
the guys? Oh,
Ralph, look at him. He had to be tiny and tall.
he was.
I think it used to be white, but it looks yellow now.
Yeah. Well, I can remember as a little girl coming in and seeing Ralph. You know, very tall, very slender.
Yes.
Remember his built around his tiny little waist and kind of, you know, bent over a little, and I can remember going back and watching the chain, you know, and looking
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, how interesting I thought it all was.
Yeah. I know there's a back room back here which was a harness, and then they sold paint.
How long did the harness room stay there? I remember.
Going back, I don't know when they quit doing that. The room is still back there,
Well, it still smells like leather.
probably. Yeah.
Had to be back there, I imagine probably the 50s, probably. Harvest,
When they quit using the harness for
50s,
machining.
60s.
As most of you probably know, and I can tell you about the nails, or the nail heads on the floor was used to measure rope or belt.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, we didn't know about the nails until we walked a lot of the dirt off the floors. And then we found these copper nails every 5 feet, and I had to bring Sean in here to tell me what they were for. But every 5 feet, we've got copper nails for measuring.
Yeah. Well, then you're building.
Over in the museum are the lights from the first original John Deere store.
The ceiling
The
lights.
ceiling lights as you walk into the museum, hanging down, was in the
They're
1900.
They were originally the gas carbide or lights.
Yeah. And they turned them into electrical.
I got some. When I was a kid, about 12 years old, and I didn't have any money, I didn't have shit, but I didn't have any bullets for my 22 single shot rifle. So I robbed John Deere. I was a little kid. I snuck in the front, and you got your big counter out there, and behind it they're shelving, and they had shells up there, 22 shells and shotgun shells. So I stuck behind the counter and reached up there, and I took a little box of 22 short shells, stuck in my pocket, ran home. And I hope I didn't go to prison for that. When I was a little kid, I did borrow them from, so I owe you for a box of 22 shells. That was 50 years ago. Yeah, but I did. Yeah.
Good. 2 years of hard labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to put me in hard labor, yeah.
$2 in your pocket, you might make that right.
Yeah, I probably could, yeah. I probably should. Oh, yeah. I remember that. That's a long time ago.
That is funny. And you all remember the penny peanut machine?
The penny machine. Yeah.
You had that out here after you moved for a long time.
Yes, we had it out there a long time. I still have it, but the glass broke. I don't know what to
Oh, you
do.
still got it, huh?
They had the second one, the first one got knocked.
Oh, we had trouble finding one that would take pennies.
Yeah,
Really? Oh, yeah. Amazing.
yeah, the one that was in here got knocked off and broken,
Mm.
but we got another one, like I said, and you couldn't find a penny dispenser.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Amazing. That was fun. We played in here a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah, used to go up and down the elevator all the time.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun in here.
And the JC's haunted house was
Oh, yeah, that JC, yeah, on the house down here, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good time.
Mhm.
Well, help yourself to refreshments and stick around, talk to the several McCreadys here because Rachel and Eric are both here. Christy's on her way.
Yeah.
She didn't quite make it. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.